The moment happened during the exchange of rings, when Reverend Matthews was asking Michael to repeat the words that would bind us together for life. I was looking into my soon-to-be husband's eyes, waiting for him to promise to love and cherish me, when his gaze shifted over my shoulder to someone in the congregation, and he smiled, not the nervous, emotional smile of a groom overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment, not the tender smile meant for his bride. This was something else entirely intimate, knowing, full of a warmth that had never been directed at me in our 2 years together. I followed his gaze and saw her in the third row, left side. Sophia Chun, his colleague from the law firm, wearing a navy blue dress that complemented her dark hair perfectly. She was smiling back at him with the same intimate recognition, and for a moment, they were completely lost in each other, as if the 200 guests and I simply didn't exist. "Michael," Reverend Matthews prompted gently, "do you take Rebecca to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Michael's attention snapped back to me, his expression shifting to something that looked like guilt masked as joy. "I do," he said, his voice steady and sure, as if he hadn't just exchanged a moment of pure connection with another woman during our wedding ceremony. "Rebecca, do you take Michael to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on me, could sense the expectation, the anticipation of the moment when I would complete this ritual and become Mrs. Michael Harrison. I looked at this man I was about to marry, this man who had just smiled at another woman with more genuine affection than he'd ever shown me, and realized I had a choice to make. I could stop the ceremony. I could ask to speak with him privately. I could demand an explanation for what I'd just witnessed. I could refuse to marry a man who was clearly in love with someone else, or I could pretend I hadn't seen it. "I do," I heard myself say. So the words came out automatically, reflexively, like a programmed response I'd been rehearsing for months. "'Cause that's what you did at weddings. You said I do when prompted, you exchanged rings, you kissed when told to kiss, you smiled for the photographer and pretended everything was perfect. Even when it wasn't. Even when your groom was in love with someone else. Even when you'd just witnessed the most honest moment of emotion he'd shown all day and it hadn't been directed at you. By the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Michael, you may kiss your bride." Michael leaned in to kiss me, and I could smell his cologne, the expensive scent he'd worn since college. The same scent that had probably lingered on Sophia's clothes after whatever moments they'd shared in secret. His lips were warm and familiar, but the kiss felt like a performance. A gesture for the audience rather than an expression of love. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers, and I found myself smiling and waving like a wind-up doll, playing the part of the radiant bride while my world quietly collapsed around me. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reverend Matthews announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Michael Harrison." Mrs. Michael Harrison. The name I'd been practicing writing for months, the identity I'd been so eager to claim. Now it felt like a costume that didn't fit, a role I'd auditioned for without understanding the script. As we walked back down the aisle together, Michael's hand in mine, I caught another glimpse of Sophia. She was applauding with the rest of the guests, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears, and her smile looked forced, painful. She looked like a woman watching the man she loved marry someone else. Which, I realized with a clarity that felt like ice water in my veins, was exactly what she was doing. "You did it," Michael whispered in my ear as we reached the back of the church. "You're officially stuck with me now." He meant it as a joke, but the words landed like a prophecy. I was stuck with him now. Legally, socially, financially bound to a man who had just revealed in the most public way possible that his heart belonged to someone else. "Rebecca, you look absolutely radiant," my mother said, appearing at my side with tears in her eyes. "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. Thank you, Mom." "Michael." "Welcome to the family," my father said, shaking Michael's hand with the kind of firm grip that was supposed to convey approval and trust. "Take care of our girl." "I will, sir. I promise." Another promise. Another vow. Another lie wrapped in the language of commitment and love. The receiving line formed quickly, a parade of family and friends offering congratulations and best wishes. I smiled and hugged and thanked everyone for coming, all while feeling like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. "Rebecca, you look beautiful," said Michael's mother, kissing my cheek with genuine warmth. "I'm so glad you're part of our family now." "Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. I'm happy to be here." but I wasn't happy. I was numb, going through the motions of being a bride while processing the devastating realization that I'd just married a man who was in love with someone else. "Congratulations, you two," said a voice I recognized. Turned to see Sophia approaching, her smile bright and brittle. "What a beautiful ceremony." "Thank you," Michael said, and I could hear something in his voice, a tenderness, a warmth that he'd never used when speaking to me. "I'm glad you could make it." "I wouldn't have missed it," Sophia replied, and the words carried a weight that had nothing to do with professional courtesy or casual friendship. She turned to me, and for a moment, our eyes met. I saw recognition there, and something that might have been sympathy. She knew that I'd seen the moment between them. She knew that I knew. "Rebecca, you look absolutely stunning," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Michael is a lucky man." "Thank you," I managed. "That's very kind of you to say. I hope you'll both be very happy together." The words were appropriate, expected, exactly what a colleague should say to a newlywed couple. But they sounded like a goodbye, like a benediction, like someone releasing a claim they'd never been able to make public. As Sophia moved away, melting back into the crowd of well-wishers, I felt Michael's hand tighten on mine. When I looked at him, his jaw was set, his expression carefully controlled. "Ready to head to the reception?" he asked. "Ready," I lied, because I wasn't ready for any of this. I wasn't ready to celebrate a marriage that had been built on a foundation of secrets and unspoken truths. I wasn't ready to pretend that everything was perfect when I'd just witnessed my husband's heartbreak for another woman during our wedding ceremony. But I was Mrs. Michael Harrison now, and Mrs. Michael Harrison would smile and dance and cut the cake and throw her bouquet and play the part of the happy bride. Even if Rebecca, the woman I'd been before I'd said I do to a lie, was dying inside. The reception was held at the Fairmont Hotel, in a ballroom that had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses and baby's breath everywhere. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over round tables draped in ivory linens, a dance floor that gleamed like polished marble. It was everything I'd dreamed of for my wedding day, everything except a groom who was actually in love with me. I sat at the head table, my dress spread around me like spilled cream, watching our guests enjoy cocktail hour while Michael worked the room. He was good at this, the social performance of being a successful attorney and devoted husband. He moved from group to group with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and backslaps from his colleagues, charming my relatives with stories about our courtship. But I could see the way his eyes tracked across the room, always finding Sophia, always checking to see where she was, who she was talking to, whether she was looking back at him. "Rebecca, honey, you seem quiet," my Aunt Linda said, settling into the chair beside me. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just taking it all in," I said, forcing a smile. "It's been such a whirlwind day. You must be exhausted. All that planning, all that stress. And now you can finally relax and enjoy being married." Relax, enjoy being married. The words felt like a joke, but Aunt Linda meant them sincerely. She had no idea that her niece had just legally bound herself to a man who was in love with someone else. "Rebecca!" My college roommate Sarah appeared with a champagne flute and a huge grin. "Oh my God, you did it. You're actually married?" "I'm actually married," I repeated, the words feeling strange in my mouth, and to such a catch. "Michael is gorgeous, successful, charming. You really hit the jackpot." "Did I? Are you kidding? Look at him." Sarah gestured toward Michael, who was currently laughing at something my father had said, his hand resting casually on my dad's shoulder in that way successful men had of claiming space and building rapport. "He's perfect husband material. Perfect husband material." If only she knew that perfect husband material could smile at another woman during his wedding vows and still manage to convince everyone he was devoted to his bride. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think it's possible to love someone and marry someone else?" Sarah's expression shifted, her party smile fading into something more serious. "That's a heavy question for your wedding day, Becca. Why are you asking?" "Just curious. Hypothetically." "Hypothetically? I think people are complicated. I think sometimes we love people we can't have, and we marry people we can live with. And you think that's okay?" "I think it's human. Not ideal, but human." I nodded, filing this information away like evidence in a case I was building against my own happiness. What about the person who gets married to someone who loves someone else? What about them? "Rebecca, what's going on? You're asking some pretty intense questions for someone who just had the wedding of her dreams. Nothing's going on. I'm just thinking about marriage, about love, about what it all means. Sarah studied my face carefully. Becca, are you having second thoughts? Because if you are, it's not too late to... It is too late, I said quickly. We're already married. The papers are signed, the vows are spoken, the deed is done. But if you're having doubts, I'm not having doubts. I'm just ... processing. Sarah didn't look convinced, but before she could press further, the wedding coordinator appeared to let us know it was time for the formal introductions and first dance. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announced, please welcome for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Harrison. The ballroom erupted in applause as Michael and I entered, his arm around my waist, both of us waving and smiling like we were the happiest couple in the world. The photographer captured every moment, every gesture, every expression that would later be preserved in an album as evidence of our perfect love story. And now, the bride and groom will share their first dance as husband and wife. Michael led me onto the dance floor as the opening notes of At Last began to play. It was the song I'd chosen months ago, back when I'd believed that marrying Michael would be the culmination of everything I'd ever wanted. You look beautiful, Michael whispered as he pulled me close, his hand warm on the small of my back. Thank you. I love you, Mrs. Harrison. The words should have made my heart soar. Instead, they felt like another performance, another line in the script we were both following. I love you too, I whispered back, because that's what wives said to their husbands during their first dance, even when they'd just watched their husbands smile at other women during their wedding ceremony. As we swayed to the music, I could see our guests watching us with indulgent smiles, probably thinking how romantic we looked, how perfect we were together. My mother was crying happy tears. Michael's father was taking pictures with his phone. Everyone was witnessing what they believed was a love story. But over Michael's shoulder, I could see Sophia standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching us with an expression of such profound sadness that it took my breath away. She looked like she was at a funeral rather than a wedding, like she was mourning something precious that had just died. Michael, I said quietly. Sophia looks upset. I felt him tense slightly in my arms. Does she? Yes. Maybe you should check on her after the dance. Rebecca, it's our wedding day. I'm not going to leave my wife to comfort a colleague who's having some kind of emotional moment, but if she's upset, she's fine. She's probably just emotional because weddings make people sentimental. Is that what you think this is? Sentimentality? Michael pulled back to look at me, his expression carefully neutral. What else would it be? I stared into his eyes, these eyes I'd looked into thousands of times over the past 2 years, and realized I'd never really seen him clearly before. I'd seen what I wanted to see, what I needed to see to maintain the illusion that we were building something real together. Nothing, I said finally. You're right, it's probably just sentimentality. The song ended, and our guests applauded as Michael spun me once, and then dipped me dramatically for the photographer. More performance, more evidence for the album that would document our perfect wedding day. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the bride and groom on the dance floor, the DJ announced. And suddenly we were surrounded by other couples, other love stories, other promises of forever. I danced with my father, who told me how proud he was and how happy I looked. I danced with Michael's father, who welcomed me to the family and said Michael was lucky to have found me. I danced with my brother, who made jokes about Michael being good enough for his sister and threatened to beat him up if he ever hurt me. Everyone was so happy for me. Everyone was so convinced that I'd found my happily ever after. Everyone except me. And everyone except Sophia, who had disappeared sometime during the father-daughter dance and hadn't returned. Have you seen Sophia? Michael asked during a brief break between dances, his voice carefully casual. No, I think she might have left. Left? But we haven't even cut the cake yet. Maybe she wasn't feeling. Well, maybe. But I could see the disappointment in his eyes, the way his gaze kept drifting toward the exit, the way his smile became more forced as the evening progressed. He was a groom at his own wedding, surrounded by celebration and joy, and he was miserable because the woman he loved had left. Michael, I said as we sat down for dinner, are you okay? Of course I'm okay. Why wouldn't I be okay? You seem distracted. I'm not distracted. I'm just... It's been a long day. I'm tired. We could leave early if you want. Skip some of the traditional stuff. No, we can't leave early. People expect certain things at weddings. We have to cut the cake, do the bouquet toss, have the last dance. We have to see it through. See it through. Like our wedding was an endurance test rather than a celebration. Like we're both just going through the motions of happiness rather than actually experiencing it. Okay, I said. We'll see it through. And we did. We cut the cake and fed each other bites while everyone cheered. We did the bouquet toss, and my cousin Jenny caught it while squealing with delight. We had the last dance to The Way You Look Tonight, swaying together in the empty ballroom while the cleanup crew worked around us. We played our parts perfectly. We were the picture of newlywed bliss, the couple everyone would remember as having had the perfect wedding. But as we finally left the reception, as Michael helped me into the car that would take us to our hotel suite, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just performed an elaborate charade. That we'd just spent an entire day pretending to be in love while the real love story, the one between Michael and Sophia, had played out in stolen glances and painful silences. And I'd let it happen. I'd seen the truth during our vows, and I'd chosen to ignore it. I'd chosen to marry a lie. The honeymoon suite at the Fairmont was everything the wedding planner had. Promised rose petals scattered across, Egyptian cotton sheets, champagne chilling in a silver bucket, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. It was romantic and luxurious and perfect for a couple celebrating the beginning of their life together. But Michael and I moved through the space like polite strangers, careful not to touch, careful not to acknowledge the tension that had been building all evening. I'm going to change, I said, gathering my overnight bag and heading toward the marble bathroom. Okay, I'll be out here. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. Still wearing my wedding dress, still looking like a bride. But the woman looking back at me felt like a stranger, someone who'd made a choice so fundamentally wrong that she couldn't quite believe she'd gone through with it. I changed into the white silk nightgown I'd bought specifically for this night. The one that was supposed to make me feel beautiful and desired and worthy of being someone's wife. Instead, I felt like I was wearing another costume, playing another role in a performance that had gone on too long. When I emerged from the bathroom, Michael was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in his tuxedo pants and white shirt, his bow tie undone and hanging around his neck. He was staring at his phone with an expression I recognized, the same look he got when he was waiting for a text from someone important. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," he said quickly, putting the phone aside. "Just checking messages from the office. On our wedding night? You know how it is. The law never sleeps." But I knew it wasn't work messages he was checking. I knew he was hoping for a text from Sophia, some acknowledgement of what had passed between them today, some explanation for why she'd left early. "Michael, can we talk?" "Of course. What about—" I sat down in the chair across from the bed, suddenly needing distance between us. "About today. About the ceremony. What about it?" "I thought it went perfectly. Everyone seemed to have a great time. Did you have a great time?" "Of course I did. It was our wedding day. You seemed distracted during the reception. I wasn't distracted. I was just overwhelmed. It's a big day, a big change. It's normal to feel a little overwhelmed." I studied his face, this face I'd kissed goodnight for 2 years. This face I'd thought I'd spend the rest of my life waking up next to. "Michael, I saw you during the vows." "What do you mean?" "I saw you look at Sophia. I saw the way you smiled at her." The color drained from Michael's face and I watched him struggle to find words, to craft a response that would explain away what we both knew I'd witnessed. "Rebecca, I don't know what you think you saw. I saw you smile at another woman during our wedding ceremony. I saw her smile back. I saw two people who are in love with each other pretending they're not. That's ridiculous. Sophia is a colleague, nothing more." "Is she?" "Yes, she's someone I work with. Someone I'm friendly with. That's all. Michael, please don't lie to me. Not tonight, not after what I saw today. I'm not lying." "You're reading something into a moment that was completely innocent. Was it innocent when you looked for her all evening? Was it innocent when you asked where she'd gone? Was it innocent when you checked your phone hoping for a message from her?" Michael stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. "Rebecca, you're being paranoid. You're seeing things that aren't there." "Am I, or am I finally seeing things that have been there all along? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm starting to understand why you've always seemed distant with me. Why you've never looked at me the way you looked at her today. Why our relationship has always felt like we're going through the motions. That's not true. Isn't it?" "Michael, when was the last time you told me you loved me without being prompted? When was the last time you initiated physical affection? When was the last time you seemed genuinely excited to see me?" Rebecca, I married you. Doesn't that prove how I feel about you? Does it? Or does it prove that you're good at doing what's expected of you? Michael sat back down on the bed, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion or defeat. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth. The truth about what? The truth about Sophia? The truth about how you feel about her? The truth about why you married me when you're clearly in love with someone else? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, the city hummed with life, people going about their Saturday night, unaware that in a honeymoon suite 20 floors above them, a marriage was dissolving before it had even really begun.
Michael?
I can't, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. You can't what? I can't tell you the truth. Not tonight. Not like this. Why not? Because it will hurt you. Because it will ruin everything. Because we just got married in front of 200 people and signed legal documents and made promises we can't take back. The promises are already broken, Michael. They were broken the moment you smiled at her during our vows. Rebecca, just tell me. Please. I need to hear you say it. Michael looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not love, not desire, but pity. He felt sorry for me. Sorry that I'd married him. Sorry that I'd bound myself to someone who couldn't love me the way I deserved. Yes, he said quietly. I'm in love with Sophia. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd known they were coming. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that my suspicions hadn't. How long? 2 years. Since she started at the firm. 2 years. The entire time we've been together. Yes. And you never told me. How could I tell you? We were building a life together. We had plans, expectations, families who were excited about our relationship. So you decided to marry me anyway. I thought... I hoped the feelings would fade. I thought if I committed to you, if I focused on our relationship, I could get over her. But you couldn't. No, I couldn't. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights that blurred through my tears. Michael, why didn't you call off the wedding? Why didn't you tell me this before we went through with it? Because I was a coward. Because I was afraid of disappointing everyone, of admitting that I'd made a mistake, of hurting you. So instead you married me while being in love with someone else. Yes, and you thought that was kinder than telling me the truth. I thought maybe it would be enough. Maybe we could build something real together, even if it wasn't the grand passion everyone talks about. But it's not enough, is it? No, it's not enough. I turned back to face him, this man I just married, this man who just admitted he was in love with someone else. What happens now? I don't know. Do you want to be with her? It doesn't matter what I want. She doesn't feel the same way about me. Doesn't she? What do you mean? Michael, I saw her face today. I saw the way she looked at you. She's in love with you too. That's impossible, is it? Or have you both been too afraid to admit it? Michael was quiet for a long time, processing this possibility. Even if that were true, it doesn't change anything. We're married now. We made vows. We have obligations. We made vows based on a lie. Have obligations to a relationship that was never real. Rebecca, what are you saying? I'm saying that maybe we should consider the possibility that this marriage was a mistake. That we both deserve better than settling for something that isn't real. You want to get divorced? On our wedding night? I want to be honest about what this is. And what this is two people who care about each other but aren't in love with each other, trying to make something work that was never going to work. But the wedding, the money, the families, the wedding is over. The money is spent. The families will understand eventually. Will they? They'll have to. Because the alternative is spending the rest of our lives pretending to be happy while slowly resenting each other. For the love we can't give. Michael looked at me with something that might have been relief. You really want to end this? I want us both to have a chance at real love. And that's not going to happen as long as we're married to each other. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for putting you through this, for marrying you when I knew I couldn't love you the way you deserve. I'm sorry too. For ignoring the signs, for convincing myself that what we had was enough. For not having the courage to ask the hard questions before we got to this point. We sat in the honeymoon suite, surrounded by rose petals and champagne, and quietly acknowledged that our marriage was over before it had even really begun. But for the first time all day, we were finally being honest with each other, and that, at least, felt like a beginning. The annulment papers were surprisingly simple. 3 pages of legal language that would erase our marriage as if it had never happened. As if the ceremony and the vows and the 200 witnesses had been nothing more than an elaborate performance. which, I supposed, they had been. I was sitting in my lawyer's office 2 weeks after the wedding, signing documents that would officially end what had never really begun. Michael had already signed his copies that morning, and according to his attorney, he'd seemed relieved rather than devastated. "Are you sure about this, Rebecca?" my lawyer Janet asked as I initialed the final page. "Marriage is a big commitment, but so is divorce. Maybe you and Michael could try counseling first. We tried talking. That was enough. But 2 weeks? Most couples at least try to work through their problems. Janet, our problem isn't something that can be worked through. Our problem is that my husband is in love with someone else and married me anyway." Janet's pen stopped moving across her notepad. "He told you that?" "He told me that on our wedding night." "Jesus, Rebecca, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be grateful that we figured it out before we wasted years of our lives pretending. Still, it must be devastating." I considered this, taking inventory of my emotions. Was I devastated, heartbroken, destroyed by the collapse of my marriage before it had even really started? "I'm not devastated," I said finally. "I'm relieved." Relieved? Relieved that I don't have to pretend anymore. Relieved that I don't have to spend the rest of my life wondering why my husband never looked at me the way he looked at other women. And Michael? How is he handling this? Michael is going to be fine. Better than fine, actually. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he's going to finally have the chance to be with the person he actually loves." Janet finished her notes and closed the file. "Rebecca, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Do you regret it? Going through with the wedding when you suspected something was wrong?" I thought about the question, about the moment during the vows when I'd seen Michael's smile at Sophia, about the choice I'd made to continue with the ceremony despite knowing something was fundamentally wrong. "No," I said finally, "I don't regret it." "Really? Even though it led to this?" "Especially because it led to this. If I'd stopped the ceremony, if I'd confronted Michael in front of everyone, we might have found a way to patch things up, to convince ourselves we could make it work. We might have spent years in a marriage that was slowly killing both of us. And instead we got 2 weeks of honesty. 2 weeks of finally admitting what we both knew but were too afraid to say that you weren't right for each other, that we weren't right for each other, and that it's okay to admit that it's better to end something that isn't working than to spend a lifetime pretending it is." I left the lawyer's office feeling lighter than I had in months. The annulment would be final in 30 days. And then I'd be Rebecca Martinez. Again, not Rebecca Harrison, not someone's wife, just myself. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Carmen. "How did it go?" I typed back, "It's done. Officially over. How are you feeling?" "Free. Want to get dinner tonight? Celebrate your freedom?" "I'd love that." As I walked to my car, I thought about the conversation I'd had with my parents the night before. They'd been devastated when I'd told them about the annulment. Confused about how their daughter's fairy tale wedding had turned into such a disaster. "But you seemed so happy," my mother had said, tears in her eyes. "You seemed so in love." "I seemed like what I thought a bride should seem like," I'd replied. "But that's not the same thing as being happy." "Rebecca, marriage is work," my father had said. "Every couple goes through rough patches. Maybe you're giving up too easily." "Dad, this isn't a rough patch. This is a fundamental incompatibility that we should have addressed before we got married. But Michael is such a good man. He's successful, he's handsome, he treats you well, he treats me like a placeholder, like someone to keep him company until the person he actually wants becomes available." That's a harsh thing to say, it's the truth. And the truth is that we both deserve better than that. My parents hadn't understood, but I could see them trying to. They'd spent so much energy being excited about my wedding, about gaining Michael as a son-in-law, about the grandchildren they'd hoped would follow. The idea that it had all been an illusion was hard for them to accept, but they'd support me eventually. They'd realize that their daughter was happier alone and authentic than married and pretending. My phone rang as I was driving home. Michael's name appeared on the screen, and I hesitated before answering. We'd barely spoken since our wedding night conversation, communicating mostly through lawyers and brief, polite text messages. "Hi, Michael. Hi. I just wanted to let you know I signed the papers this morning. I know. I just finished signing mine. So, it's really over. It's really over." There was a pause, and I could hear him struggling with something he wanted to say. "Rebecca, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I talked to Sophia yesterday." My heart skipped a beat. And I told her about us, about the annulment, about how I feel about her. What did she say? She said she's been in love with me for 2 years, but never said anything because she knew. I was with you. So you were both idiots. We were both idiots. Are you going to do something about it now? We're having dinner tonight. To talk, to figure out if there's really something there or if we've just been romanticizing something that isn't real. And if there is something there, then we're going to take it slow. We're going to be honest with each other from the beginning. We're going to try to build something real instead of just falling into something convenient. I'm happy for you, Michael. Really? Are you? Because I feel like I ruined your life. You didn't ruin my life. You gave me the chance to find a better one. What do you mean? I mean, I spent 2 years trying to be the perfect girlfriend, the perfect fiancée, the perfect wife for you. I spent 2 years being grateful that someone like you had chosen someone like me. But I never stopped to ask whether I was choosing you. And were you? No. I was choosing the idea of being married, the idea of being settled, the idea of having my life figured out. But I wasn't choosing you as a person. So we were both settling. We were both settling. And now we both get the chance to find something better. Rebecca? Yes, thank you. For what? For not stopping the ceremony. For letting us go through with it so we could figure out how wrong we were for each other. Thank you for being honest with me. Finally, I should have been honest from the beginning. We both should have been honest from the beginning. But we're being honest now, and that's what matters. After we hung up, I sat in my car outside my apartment building and thought about the journey that had brought me here. 2 weeks ago, I'd been Mrs. Michael Harrison, a newlywed with a beautiful wedding album and a marriage that was built on lies. Today, I was Rebecca Martinez, single and free and facing an uncertain but authentic future. I thought about Sophia, probably getting ready for her dinner with Michael, probably nervous and excited and hopeful in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be for 2 years. I thought about Michael, finally able to pursue the woman he'd been in love with all along. And I thought about myself, finally able to pursue the life I'd been too afraid to want. My phone buzzed with another text from Carmen. Dinner at 7? I made reservations at that new place downtown. I typed back, perfect. I have a lot to celebrate. Like what? Like the fact that I'm finally free to find out who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else wants. I love that. See you at 7. As I walked up to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement about my own life. Not excitement about fitting into someone else's plans. Not excitement about playing a role I thought I should play. But genuine excitement about the possibility of building something that was entirely my own. I'd watched Michael smile at another woman during our wedding vows, and I hadn't stopped the ceremony. It was the best decision I'd ever made. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Portland, reading the wedding announcement in the local paper that had caught my attention. The headline read, "Local attorneys wed in intimate ceremony," and the photo showed Michael and Sophia on the steps of a small chapel, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that couldn't be faked. They looked like people who'd found their person, who'd finally stopped pretending and started living. Interesting reading? I looked up to see David Chun, no relation to Sophia, despite the shared last name sliding into the chair across from me. David was a teacher at the elementary school where I'd started volunteering. A man who'd caught my attention not because he was successful or handsome or what I thought I should want, but because he made me laugh and challenged my opinions and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. "My ex-husband just got married," I said, showing him the announcement. "How does that make you feel?" "Happy for him. Really, genuinely happy. That's very mature of you. It's very honest of me. He's with the person he should have been with all along." David studied the photo, taking in Michael's radiant smile, Sophia's obvious joy. They look like they're actually in love. They are. They were in love the whole time I was married to him. They just didn't have the courage to admit it. And you're okay with that? I'm more than okay with it. I'm grateful for it. Grateful? Grateful that they finally found the courage to be honest. Grateful that Michael and I figured out we were wrong for each other before we wasted years of our lives pretending. Grateful that I learned the difference between being chosen and being valued. David reached across the table and took my hand, his touch warm and familiar and completely different from anything I'd experienced with Michael. And what's the difference? Being chosen means someone picks you because you meet their criteria, because you fit into their plans, because you're convenient or appropriate or safe. Being valued means someone sees who you actually are and can't imagine being with anyone else. And which one are you now? I looked at this man who'd spent 3 months getting to know me before asking me out, who'd never once suggested I should be different or better or more grateful for his attention, who seemed to like me more the more he got to know me, not less. I'm valued. Finally. Good. Because you're extraordinary, Rebecca Martinez. And anyone who doesn't see that is an idiot, even when I'm complicated and opinionated and sometimes difficult. Especially when you're complicated and opinionated and sometimes difficult. That's when you're most yourself. We finished our coffee and walked through the Saturday morning farmers market, talking about everything and nothing, his students, my new job at the nonprofit, the book we'd both been reading, the documentary we wanted to see together. It was easy conversation, the kind that flowed naturally between two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Rebecca, David said as we stopped at a flower stand, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret it? Going through with the wedding to Michael when you knew something was wrong? I considered the question, thinking about that moment during the vows when I'd seen Michael smile at Sophia, about the choice I'd made to continue with the ceremony despite my instincts. No, I said finally. I don't regret it at all. Really? Really? Because if I'd stopped the ceremony, if I'd confronted the problem then, we might have found a way to patch things up. We might have spent years in a marriage that was slowly killing both of us, and instead we got the gift of clarity. We got to see exactly how wrong we were for each other, and we got the courage to admit it. That's a very generous way to look at it. It's the only way to look at it. David, I spent 2 years trying to be the perfect girlfriend for someone who was never going to love me the way I deserved. If I'd married him and stayed married to him, I might have spent my whole life doing that. And now I know what it feels like to be with someone who doesn't want me to be perfect, who likes me exactly as I am. David bought me a bouquet of wildflowers, not because it was expected or appropriate, but because he'd noticed me admiring them. As we walked back to his car, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. So desperate to be chosen that she'd ignored every warning sign, every instinct that told her something was wrong. That woman felt like a character I'd played in a movie, someone I'd inhabited but never really been. The woman walking through this farmer's market was different. She was someone who knew her worth, who understood that being alone was better than being with someone who made her feel alone, who had learned that the right person wouldn't need to convince themselves to love her. Rebecca, David said as we reached his car, I have something to tell you. What? I'm falling in love with you. The words should have terrified me. 6 months ago, they would have sent me into a panic about whether I was worthy of love, whether I was doing enough to deserve it, whether I should be grateful or cautious or careful. Instead, they filled me with a warm certainty that felt like coming home. I'm falling in love with you too, I said. Even though we've only been dating for 3 months? Even though we've only been dating for 3 months. Sometimes you just know. How do you know? Because you make me feel like myself. Because you don't want me to be smaller or quieter or more agreeable. Because when you look at me, I can see that you actually see me, and that's enough. That's everything. David kissed me then, right there in the parking lot of the farmer's market. And it felt like the most honest thing that had ever happened to me. Not a performance, not a gesture for an audience, but a genuine expression of feeling between two people who'd found each other at exactly the right time. David? Yes, thank you. For what? For showing me what love looks like when it's real. As we drove home, I thought about Michael and Sophia, probably somewhere celebrating their new marriage, finally able to love each other openly and honestly. I thought about my parents, who'd slowly come to understand that their daughter was happier alone and authentic than married and pretending. I thought about the wedding album from my first marriage, packed away in a closet somewhere, evidence of a beautiful day that had been built on a foundation of lies. But mostly I thought about the future, about the possibility of building something real, with someone who saw me clearly and loved what he saw. About the chance to be valued instead of just chosen. About the gift of finally understanding the difference. 6 months ago, I'd watched my husband smile at another woman during our wedding vows, and I hadn't stopped the ceremony. It was the best decision I'd ever made, because it had led me here to this moment, this man, this life that was finally, authentically mine. Sometimes the wrong choice leads you to exactly where you need to be.